Hi, everybody. I thought I would clarify deontology for you just a little more in depth than what we had in the book. You know this, right? Immanuel Kant was born in what used to be called Prussia, what's now some parts of Russia. In the 17th century, he was born from a very religious family, yet he was growing up in what's called the time of the Enlightenment, where people are looking around and looking to empirical data, looking at information they find, evidence they find in the real world, like thinking about science and thinking about biology and numbers and asking what they can know. So in other words, people are questioning religion at that time. He thought that maybe he could develop, even though he came from a very religious family, he thought that he could develop a secular, a non-religious theory of ethics that could apply to everyone, everywhere, all the time. Categorically, universally, he thought he had come up with something great, and he recognized that we're all prone to corruption. Humans are very prone to becoming corrupt, to doing things that are not necessarily good for society. So he thought, in response to a utilitarian framework or other ethical theories, let's start from the idea that humans have reason. They're the most rational creatures on the planet, he thought, and we'll give them benefit of the doubt that they can reason. And so he said, let's start with reason being the highest importance, really crucial to what we're doing here with this ethical theory. Then he said, okay, this is a duties-based ethics. In other words, we're not going to tell people to make their moral choices, make their decisions based on what they can gain or what they will get as a result, like we talked about with utilitarianism. Instead, he wants people to do things because it's the right thing to do. Don't think about what you're going to gain. Don't think about who will be happier, who will be in pain. Think about what is the right thing to do. What gets in the way of that? He said there's something that gets in the way. Look at this picture here. This picture shows a man walking on top of people. He has a crown on his head, and he is up top, above, considered somewhat exalted, almost like a king, right? Kant says that's kind of a problem. According to him, lots of the reasons why we have so many problems are ethically, we have all these hidden agendas. We are usually operating from the thought of what can I get, what can I gain, what will benefit me most. So if you think about a lot of the theories that we've talked about until now, that's how people made decisions. You might still eventually need to make a decision using utilitarianism and thinking about what's the best outcome. But Kant doesn't want you to do that. Kant wants you to think, what is the right thing to do, no matter what happens? Sadly, that's often clouded by these hidden inclinations. What can I get? Okay? There are some moral propositions that he has to help guide us through behaving better. For a moral action, he says, it must be done, again, out of this obligation to do the right thing. An action will have moral worth, not if it achieves a goal, but only if someone's will is good. So don't tell the truth because you're obliged to, because it's going to make someone feel better. You do that out of goodwill because it's the right thing to do. You've learned what the right thing to do is, and you want to do that genuinely. Also, these actions must be done out of respect for the law, not a legal law, but the law of reason. So reason is the ultimate for Kant. Try to remember that. Reason and intellect. He really gives humans a lot of credit in that he thinks if we try hard enough, we can all rationalize what the best thing is. So he's talking about the law of practical reason, and this is how he develops the categorical imperative. Categorical imperative, if you remember nothing else about Kant, remember the categorical imperative. It has two formulations, and this is key. The two formulations, one, and you don't have to remember this in any order, just remember them both. Act only according to that maxim by which you can act at the same time that it'll become universal law. What does that mean? What is he really saying? Behave in such a way that you would want everyone else to behave, or don't do things that you wouldn't want everyone else to do. If you think about cheating on your partner, would you want your partner to cheat on you? Do you want everybody else in the world to cheat? If that's the way the whole world worked, then we would just live with a world of cheaters, right? So tell the truth because you want everybody else to tell the truth. Okay, that's the first thing. Act in a way that you want everyone else to behave. Second, act in a way that you treat people as ends in and of themselves and never as means. What does that equate to? Let's see. You've heard this before. How shall we treat others? We're going to treat them not as means, but as ends. And again, what does that mean? If I'm treating someone as a means, that equates to looking at someone, what can I get from them? What can they do for me? That's a means, an instrument, a tool for my use. They're going to provide me with something I need. If you go to the supermarket today and it's busy, maybe you're wanting to get home and watch something on TV and just relax, you might not be so kind to the person who's helping you bag your groceries or, helping you pay for your groceries. Kant would say, it doesn't matter. He realizes you need things from people, but look at them rather as an end, as another human being having inherent value. Intrinsic value means it's already there. It's not value based on what they can do for you, but it's value in and of itself. Question is, can you think of people that way every time you interact with another human? Is that easy or is that hard? I'm not saying it's easy, but this is what Kant thinks we can do. If we use our pure reason, we can get to the point where we can treat people as ends and never merely as means. This is what he's saying in terms of the two formulations of the categorical imperative. Act the way you want other people to act, and don't treat people as tools for your advantage. I hope that helps.